this is the second part of a two-part series explaining the basic parts of how the required featured image plugin works and does its special featured image stuff. So in the last post we showed how basically the JavaScript works. So when I go to create a new post, it says, hey, this has no featured image and it won't let me publish a post. I can put in a title and a body, and I still can't publish it because didn't get text expander work because I mistyped. I still can't publish because I need a featured image. If I set a featured image, then it might let me do it, but the image has to be of a set size. Once it's of a right size, then I can finally hit publish. So that's how that works. And today we're just going to focus on the PHP parts of that. So the first part of the PHP part of that is, ooh, this snuck in on me, is that we want the post to not be able to get published when you're trying to sneak it in through like a quick edit or some other change you might make. And that's done, you see that was blocked, my attempt to publish this post. And that's done with this transition post status action that WordPress provides. Essentially, I've got this function RFI guard that hooks onto that, and it does two things. One is it checks, is the post moving to publish state? Because I don't want to block someone from changing a draft into pending review. That's fine with me because this is just supposed to check on the publish step. So only if they're going to publish, and then we run this check that says RFI should stop post publishing. And if it's true that we should stop the post from publishing and it's going to the publish state, then we have this WP die get warning message call. So that's the basic idea there. And the get warning message function basically just says if there's an image size set, it'll send a message like we saw that says, hey, you need an image of a set size, and otherwise it'll say, hey, you need a featured image. So that's all that happens when we get into this condition. But how do we get into it? Well, this RFI should stop publishing function is the real meat of that. So if we go down to that, we see that we're setting up 3 temporary variables, and these are just to make the conditional very clear in English. So if it's after enforcement time, and enforcement time is the idea that for a site that's been in existence for 10 years, they probably only started including featured images when WordPress had them. So if they want to go fix a typo in a post from 2008, we don't want to block them. So enforcement time is when the plugin gets activated or thereabouts. An enforcement time is set so that old posts can still be updated and republished without featured images, and only new posts get blocked from publishing or require that you maintain a featured image on them. So that's what the enforcement time part is. Then we say, is it a watch post type? And a watch post type, essentially this plugin works against posts or pages or whatever. You can pick among post pages, testimonials, contact forms, whatever it is that supports featured images, you can select among them. And so is supported post type just takes that post object and compares it to an array of post types, take the post off the post type, take that post type off the post, and compare it to see if that's in the array. So it is in this case, and we're after the enforcement time. So then we just need to know, is a large enough image attached? And so if it has a large enough image attached, then we want to return that we shouldn't block it publishing. So that's what this last bang here is. The bang says return the opposite of if it has a large enough image attached, right? Because if it has a large enough image attached, we want to say don't stop publishing, so we return false. And you'll notice that false is the default. So if everything gets satisfied, we also get false. So how do we know if the large enough image is attached? So we're passing in the post object. And then we're using this WordPress function called getPostThumbnailID. This is how featured images inside the WordPress functions are dealt with. They're called thumbnails. So getPostThumbnailID says basically get the ID of the image for the post. So if the image ID is null, which will be the case when the post does not have a featured image, then we return false because it doesn't have a large enough image attached. It doesn't have any image attached, so obviously that doesn't work. So if it has an image attached, then we use this WP get attachment image source function, passing in the ID and the size we want, and then we get the size of the image because those are in the array that WordPress returns with this WP attachment image source function. And so we compare those against the option for minimum size that are set in the database. And so if it's big enough, then we return true because we know that the size, the width and the height were both big enough. So that is a large enough image that was attached to this post. Otherwise, we return false because if either the width or the height is insufficient, we shouldn't let it publish. So that's what that whole thing does. So again, when post inside of WordPress, and post can be any kind of content type, transitions post status, we have this RFI guard function that hooks on and stops the process entirely with this WP die call if it shouldn't let it publish. The other thing that's interesting in the PHP for this plugin, I think, is that the JavaScript we talked about last week does not notice the difference between post types, and it doesn't know about this enforcement window concept. We were able to escape discussion of it entirely last week, and that JavaScript can not think about that part because this PHP does. We basically have this function that is enqueuing that script in about the same way you'd expect if you've ever seen that happen before, but that's inside a conditional. And that's because I only want to include this JavaScript if it's the kind of post type that this plugin should be checking against. So if it's a supported post type and we are in the enforcement window on this post. So again, if I'm editing a post from 2007, I consider that outside of the enforcement window, whereas if I'm editing a post from 2015, I'd probably consider that inside the enforcement window, depending on when I install the plugin. So basically, only if both of those two things are true, we're in the enforcement window, this is a supported post type, do we include the JavaScript. So the JavaScript can only think about what size is the image and is it there at all. It doesn't have to worry about these post types that are supported in this enforcement window concept. But once it's there, we basically just register the script, we enqueue it, and we pass in some WP localized scripts that are those globals we referred to in the JavaScript video. There's obviously some more that this plugin does. It sets up text domains so that the plugin can be translated into Italian and Cantonese and whatever else language you want. But that's the real heart, those two things of how the style sheet is included and how the post status transition is watched and blocked are what I think is really the heart of this plugin and worth highlighting. All right, have a good one.